Welcome to the Progress Texas Happy Hour.
Okay, everybody. Chris Mosier here, Communications Director for Progress Texas. Welcome back to the Progress Texas Happy Hour as we continue our tour through the candidates running for office across the Lone Star State as Democrats, which is a courageous and important move on its face for those candidates who don't find themselves in solid blue areas of the state, and that does apply for sure to Shaun Finnie, who is the Democratic nominee in one particular congressional district that's made the news already because of what's going down on the Republican side of the ballot, making this an opportunity that might be even more promising than it may have appeared before the primary a few weeks back. It's exciting times for sure for Shaun Finnie. Welcome to the show. Appreciate you joining.
Thanks for having me, Chris. It's great to be on.
Absolutely. So real quick, give us your personal bio and an introduction, and include in that a little something on why you decided to run for this seat.
Sure. I grew up on a farm in Saskatchewan, in just north of North Dakota.
Yep.
I grew up in a family that nobody had gone to college on my dad's side. Nobody had gone to college on my mother's side. I guess we were certainly of modest means, maybe quite poor. I just didn't realize it because everybody else around me was in the same boat. I was always a good student, and so I went to University of Saskatchewan and got a liberal arts degree. I was the first person on either side of my family to go to college. I then went to law school, and then I went to Calgary and worked in oil and gas law for 4 years. In the summers while I was in high school and in undergrad and in law school, I had worked as a landman in the oil and gas industry. So
okay.
I'd spent 7 summers in oil and gas. I go to law school, I come back to Calgary, I become an oil and gas lawyer. I'd always had an interest in business. And so after 4 years of practicing law, I was admitted to Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management. So I went down to Northwestern, got my MBA, graduated in 1995. And basically, I've spent the last 30 years working in investment banking, doing almost all of it in mergers and acquisitions and almost all of it in the oil and gas industry. So I've worked in Toronto, I've worked in Calgary, I've worked in New York, went back to Calgary. But for the last 20 plus years, I've been working in investment banking in Houston. I love my job. I love what I do. I love the firm I work for, Evercore. I love the people I work with. It's been a tremendous career. I've been semi-retired for the last 3 or 4 years. Instead of working 8 hours a week, now I'm working 40 hours a week. And I had zero intention of running for public office. That was not something that I had on my bingo card. It's not something my family had on my bingo card. And it's not something that any of my friends had on their bingo cards. In fact, when I announced that I was running, both my wife and I got emails saying Shaun's account's been hacked. People are saying he's running for that he's running for Congress. You need to address this.
Yeah. This can't be real.
Yeah, this is like, what? This guy's never talked about this. Part of the beauty of the American legislative system that I studied as a child in Canada is 3 equal branches of government. I think, it's better than the parliamentary system. And I always really thought this is a fantastic system because it ensures that no one person can go rogue and become a dictator, become a king.
Right.
Got all these great checks and balances.
Right. Or that's the way it's supposed to work anyway.
Right. And for 60 years of my life, that's worked well, But what I saw happening in January and February and March just told me this isn't working. Like, in my mind, again, I come from a business world, so I'm going to use a business description. The shareholders, the citizens, elect the board of directors, which is Congress. There is a CEO, that's the president, but he is the chief executive officer. His job is to execute. His job is to run the business. Congress makes the rules. They make the laws. They oversee the president, who runs the business and executes. The president doesn't make laws, Congress does, and the president reports to Congress, i.e., if he wants to hire someone like RFK Jr.
Right.
or Pete Hegseth or Tulsi Gabbard,
Right.
he has to go to the board of directors. He has to go to the Senate and say, are you guys okay with this? And a normal board of directors would say, no, are you off your meds? Like
Come on. Yeah.
the practicing alcoholic to run the Secretary of Defense? Like,
Don't forget the brainworm.
right. Yeah. So the medieval medicine man who didn't go to law school, who thinks, we should turn back the clock medicine wise. I mean,
Right.
no legitimate board of directors would sign off on that. So, that was my first hint, like, we have some poor corporate governance.
Right.
Then Congress controls the purse. Look, I grew up in Canada and I knew that when I was 10 years old. Congress controls the purse. Yet the president says, hey, I know I said I was going to fix inflation, but actually I'm going to put this tax on everybody every time you go to buy something and cause inflation.
Right.
And so a regular board of directors would say, hey, DJT, stay in your lane, man. We're the ones that control the purse, and we don't want to put tariffs on the entire world. We don't want to piss off the entire world, and we don't want to cause more inflation by making every American family pay $2,000 or $3,000 more when they go to buy goods.
Right.
But that's not what Congress did. They just said, oh, yeah, no, great idea. We're cool with it. And I guess the final thing was the one big beautiful bill where Congress passed a bill that gave the wealthiest Americans tax cuts. 12 million people lost their health care. And this is a big one. My kids and their friends, and I don't have grandkids yet, but when I do, they got an extra $4 trillion of debt,
Right.
which is totally going to screw them. Not only because there's not going to be any Social Security for them down the road, there's not going to be any Medicare, but I can tell you, as somebody who works on Wall Street, that the bond market is going to crack. And it's probably not that far away. And when that happens and interest rates skyrocket because people don't have faith in the U.S. government's ability to repay its debts, my kids, as my son said, Dad, when I go to buy a house, I'm not going to be paying 4 or 5% in interest rates like you did. I'm going to be paying 14 or 15%. And if I go to start a business, I'm going to be paying 15, 16% in interest rates, which means that young people won't be able to buy houses, won't be able to start businesses, and their economic future is very stark if we don't address this debt. And so the Republicans are all about tariff and spend. Give tax cuts, but then put this regressive sales tax, consumption tax on the people of this state and the rest of the country. How I felt like we were just totally screwing young people with this bill. That was kind of the final straw. And I said, I can't just sit back and do nothing. I have to make sure that there is an alternative to the Republicans and their madness. And my fundamental view is we need more business-oriented moderates in Congress. And I think there's only one party today that welcomes moderates.
CD2 is a terrific example, actually, in practice of what you're talking about with what's happened with Dan Crenshaw, which is where I wanted to go next with you here. Yeah. From what I understand about CD2, this district in the recent redistricting was drawn for actually slightly less overall Republican advantage, but somehow or other that turned into a greater advantage for the much more radical MAGA candidate, Steve Toth, to take out Dan Crenshaw, who, Crenshaw was rock star just a few years ago. He was going to be the future of the Republican Party from what a lot of folks thought at that time, but now he finds himself, run out of town. Tell us about, your views on what's happened to the Republican Party, and tell me how you think that might influence your chances in this race. There are bound to be some Republicans who are looking for that moderate sort of option, but they don't have it anymore now that Crenshaw's out the window.
Right. I don't think there could be a starker difference between myself and Steve Toth. I mean, it's like night and day, black and white, good and evil. I mean, there is no nuance here, Chris. You either like the moderate or you like the radical. I mean, it just boils down to that.
Right.
And that's how many Republicans see it. I have a lot of Republican supporters, people in the business community, clients of mine who have just said to me, look, Shaun, I've never voted for a Democrat. I've never donated to a Democrat, but I know you. I trust you. I just want somebody in the middle who understands economics and can help us fix this mess. And Steve Toth is the poster boy for the crazy right.
Yes.
And so when I look, there's no way I win this district unless I get some people who are registered Republicans to vote for me. But I've had good success in fundraising with Republicans who just say, I've had enough. I do not recognize this party. Now, look, what percentage of our district is MAGA, like the super right, that's no matter what, they're not going to vote for me? I don't know. Maybe it's 1/3, maybe it's 40%. In my estimation, over half of the Republicans in our district are what I would call normal Republicans, Bush Republicans,
Sure.
Whatever, what Republicans were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
When you look at my platform, which again is very moderate, very in the middle, very bipartisan, as one of my Republican donors said, look, if George Bush arose from the grave and looked at your platform, he'd say, well, Shaun looks like a moderate Republican, and this guy is, I don't know what he is, but he's some crazy Pat Buchanan on steroids, right-wing Tea Party dude.
Way out there for sure.
And so a lot of Republicans are recognizing that and saying, look, this is a return to sanity. The whole moderate versus extremist, moderate versus radical thing is getting a lot of traction with not only is the Democratic base revved up and all in, as you saw in the primary voting, and I had to wait in line on a Friday for 98 minutes to vote. I was happy to do it. Not only are they all in, but you're seeing moderate Republicans say, look, enough is enough. I just can't. What Steve Toth says, I do not want this person representing me in Washington. Now, Crenshaw was at a difficult spot because, he had offended the some of the MAGA part of the party,
and the dear leader.
And he had lost the moderates because he didn't speak out on tariffs. He seemed okay. He voted for this bill that added all this debt. And so, he was supporting Trump and everything, yet the MAGA part of the party wasn't supporting him. But I think the bigger issue with Dan was he just didn't come to the district much. When he did, he didn't hold town halls. Mm-hmm. When he did hold town halls, he didn't take questions. When he did take questions, he would talk condescendingly to his constituents, even his Republican constituents. And I think people just got tired of it. Like, he's a smart guy who just became very arrogant and took it for granted that A, a Democrat wasn't going to win this district, and B, he'd never had any real competition on the Republican side.
Right.
And so, he's a good example of why we need term limits. There were a lot of people excited and interested in Dan when he started, but 6 years is long enough in Congress. Like, we need to get new blood in, and he's an example of why we need term limits, which, by the way, I'm a big fan of. The thing about Toth, too, that's very interesting for Democrats is he is a very Montgomery County centric guy. He has had success running in state legislature because, he's from Conroe. He represents a very conservative state district. He's in a very conservative part of Montgomery County. But sometimes I think he forgets that Harris County is part of this district as well. And that, in fact, Harris County makes up more than 50% of the registered voting population. And he doesn't spend a ton of time in Harris County, never has had to. And he's extremely unpopular when you talk to the population in Harris County. Steve appeals to a certain very small demographic of white people in Montgomery County who tend to be older,
Right.
And he's not used to diversity and thinking about the issues related to other parts of the population. And look, when you look at the demographics of this district, it's 50% white, 30% Latino, 12% African American, and then 3 or 4% Asian and other folks. And I'm not sure he's doing much to appeal to the people other than the people of Conroe. And I think he's doing that to his own detriment. And for me to win, I need a couple of things to happen. I need some moderate Republicans. If I get 10% of the people Republicans who vote in this election to vote for me, I have a very good chance of winning. If I get 15%, I will win. I need the people in Harris County to get out and vote. And I need young people to get out and vote, because a big part of the reason that I'm running is for my kids and my grandkids, and listening to my kids and the issues that they feel, the national debt being a huge one of them, and how they feel like my generation and baby boomers are just passing legislation designed to screw them. We need young people to get out and vote. And with what's happening with ICE, with what's happening in Iran, young people, with what's happening with the One Big Beautiful Bill and all the debt, young people are fired up. And when you look at Steve Toth's rhetoric and his platform, it's hard to find something in there that young people are going to be excited about. Like what are some of Steve's top things? The Muslim religion is inconsistent with Western society. 10 commandments in every classroom. No vaccine mandates, no liberal ideology, no critical race theory.
Right.
Texas has all these radically liberal public schools, which my kids who have gone to school in different parts of this country find laughable that anybody would describe Texas's public schools as liberal. He doesn't say anything about healthcare other than no vaccine mandates. He doesn't say anything about cost of living. The only economic statement he makes is he's totally in favor of Trump's tariffs. So he's totally in favor of causing you and me and everybody else to pay $2,000, $3,000 more. He's not talking about the cost of living. He's not talking about the cost of healthcare. And he doesn't like public education. He loves vouchers, and he loves homeschooling, and he loves taking my tax dollars and your tax dollars and giving them to, Christian nationalist schools. He's not for supporting public schools and teachers. So there's a big difference between him and me. And I think young people are going to be, we need young people to come out. I think they're going to like my platform better than his.
This being the district that it is, technically being a red district. And yeah, I would say that the MAGA stock is dropping while the Democratic stock is definitely rising at the moment. There are still going to be folks in the district. You're going to have a, like you said, a very fired up and very active and large turnout of Democrats to have a chance of beating, even a flawed Republican candidate in this particular race. So, there are people who are going to want to know about, your positions on things like reproductive rights and the environment, voting rights and all those sort of things. Give us a little bit of, what you might say to a person who might be checking out this race and finding you a little more moderate than they want, someone who's a little bit left of you. What sort of a response would you have to someone who's doesn't want to vote for not only a Republican with an R next to their name, but someone that they can't distinguish from a Republican just based on their views?
Yeah, well, I think let me just talk about some of my platform issues. So
Sure.
You mentioned reproductive rights. Like, I make my own healthcare decisions. I think women should be able to make their own healthcare decisions. Like, that's ridiculous to me. I have two daughters, one who lives in New York, one who lives in Los Angeles, and I would like them to move back to Texas. And they said, Dad, there's no way we're moving back to Texas. Because if I get pregnant, I could die, because I could have a miscarriage, and then I go to the hospital, and then the doctor's like, you're not quite close enough to death.
Right,
Come back tomorrow, and we'll call Paxton. We are driving young women, accomplished young women, out of this state. The environment, look, I think there was a lot of good stuff. I don't completely agree with the IRA, but I think there was a lot of good stuff in Biden's IRA. And when I look at what Trump is doing today and what Chris Wright is doing today, they are taking us back decades. So I don't feel like my support of President Biden and the IRA is in any way radically right or radically left. I just think it makes common sense. Voting rights. I think if you support democracy, you should want more people to vote, not less. And so I'm for everything we can do to ensure that everybody gets a chance to vote. And this idea of ICE the Steve Bannon idea of putting ICE outside of polling stations and intimidating people and fear mongering so that people don't vote. I mean, that is completely unacceptable. Immigration. Look, I'm an immigrant to this country. I am firmly aligned with the 1986 Immigration and Reform Act. Look, in that act, three things happened. One, President Reagan said we need to secure the borders. Two, so I agree we need to secure the borders. I think it's all the other stuff with ICE in the interior that's ridiculous. Two is, look, I'm all for deporting people if you came to this country illegally and you committed a serious crime. But just like the 1986 Act, if you came to this country illegally, you've been here 5 years, you've paid your taxes, you've stayed out of trouble, you are an important part of the community. We need you.
Right.
And you're an important part of the economy. We need you. So I'm highly supportive of trying to help those people find a path to citizenship. Thirdly, I'm for spending more money to make sure that legal immigration becomes more efficient. Number one is we need more immigration judges. Like why these guys came in, this current administration, and fired a bunch of immigration judges when we need more immigration judges to deal with the backlog is beyond me. It's like they're trying to stop all immigration. We need more immigration judges. We need more money spent on technology to update the process so it becomes more efficient, easier to immigrate legally to this country. I don't think my view on immigration is, it's informed by my own experience, even though 3 of my 4 grandparents immigrated from the United States to Canada, even though my mother was a US citizen, it's still a hell of a process to, immigrate to the United States. We need to make that easier. We need to improve our immigration system. And look, if you deport 10 to 15 million people, you want to see inflation, just think about the rise in labor costs.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you're a Republican who doesn't care about humans, but you probably do care about economics. And deporting 10 to 15 million people is going to just cause costs to skyrocket. So I don't think there's anything very far left about my views on immigration. I don't think there's anything very far right about my views on immigration. I think it just makes sense.
It's interesting how the current position of the Overton window has made, all the stuff that you just said, seems to some to be super hard left sort of stuff when really, in the real world, it's just common sense sort of stuff. So, Shaun, it's been great to meet you. As we like to close down with the elevator pitch. So you're out there campaigning and you've run into an undecided and independent voter, and you got 2 minutes to convince that person to vote for you. What are you going to say to that person?
Look, I'm new to this. I'm not a career politician. I'm doing this because I feel called to do this, because I just think we need better representation in Washington. We need more moderates who understand business. I'm very moderate. I'm very bipartisan. I'm very inclusive. We have a dysfunctional workplace in Congress. I'm going to try to work across the aisle, to get us back to the 1990s when Congress worked and people worked together. I'm just smack dab in the middle. On the other hand, you have the opposite. You have somebody who's very extreme. I'm talking about 3 things at the heart of it: economics, healthcare, support for public education. My Republican opponent is all about social issues. He just wants to talk about social issues. He wants to talk about the Muslim religion not being consistent with Western society. He wants to talk about the 10 Commandments. He wants to talk about trans people all the time. He wants to talk about critical race theory and liberal ideology. I want to talk about the things that the people I know in CD2 care about: the cost of living, addressing inflation, the cost of healthcare and making sure they have healthcare, and making sure their kids get a solid education. He doesn't talk about any of that stuff. The only economic point, as we talked about before, is he seems to really like tariffs and is, insensitive to the fact that his potential constituents really hate tariffs and don't want to be paying that. At the heart of it, I want to get rid of the tariffs. I want to lower the cost of living. We need to address the federal debt if we love our kids. I want to do whatever I can to have everybody in this country have medical coverage that they can afford. I want to do everything I can to make sure as many people as possible can go to college, can go to university, can go to trade school and be able to pay for it. I want to make sure that women can make their own healthcare decisions. We need immigration reform. We need to fix that. I want to try to find a path for citizenship for those people who are a part of the fabric of our community and have done so much for our economy. And we cannot afford to get rid of them. So that's my pitch. And again, I would say to anybody from CD2 listening, look, it's a very clear choice. There is no nuance here. I'm a moderate. He's a radical. I want to reject the crazy. Most of this country is made up of moderates. We need more moderates in Congress. And I think we could use more moderates who understand business. So that's my pitch. And Chris, I really appreciate you having me on.
It's for sure.
It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. We'll definitely check in again between here and November. We got a lot of runway to go. And so Shaun Finnie running for CD2 against MAGA Steve Toth. Great to meet you, and thanks for joining. We appreciate the time.
Thank you, Chris. Great to meet you.
Our mission at Progress Texas is to improve and save Texans' lives by acting on our shared bold progressive values, and that starts with countering the billionaire and corporate-funded conservative disinformation machine. Progress Texas is an independent, nonprofit, rapid response media organization. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media and action in the Lone Star State. I'm Chris Mosier for Shaun Finnie. We'll see you next time.